All right, guys, if you're here, it means you want to hear about Spider-Man. Spider-Man Brand New Day. It just came out today. I just saw it. It was amazing. I'm going to see it tomorrow. Now, on my social media pages, I have a shortened, 2 to 3 minute review. This is a kind of a long form. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm going to talk and say whatever I want and for how long as I want and kind of go into things, not go into things, whatever. So that's why we're here, right? So Spider-Man Brand New Day. It's great. I said it in my shorter review. I thought it was amazing. Now I'm gonna start off with everyone likes to compare things. I'm gonna start off where I would compare this. I still think that Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man No Way Home are like the top tier live action Spider-Man movies. To me, I still don't know which one of those two would be on my top. I would have to literally rewatch both of them. But this one is pretty close to those. Like pretty close. Now, if anyone hears what I just said and they're like, "Oh, this one sucks," or "It's not gonna be," no, no, no. That's not what I'm saying. Please, there are nuances. I think this movie is amazing. I think it's better than all the other Tom Holland Marvel movies or Spider-Man films, except for No Way Home. And again, I have to watch it again and kind of compare and contrast and see which one I feel like is better than the other. But again, they're so good and they're so close that it doesn't even matter. Like, it was just such a good movie. And a lot of the critiques that people had about the Tom Holland films, him feeling like Iron Man Jr. or his movies being too grand, and they like Spider-Man as a street level villain. I mean, not villain, but as a street level, crime fighter and hero. And it seems like they took all those critiques and applied it to this film. You know, the movie feels extremely, grounded, extremely low level, friendly neighborhood Spider-Man type of storyline in terms of its scope and reach. And also, he doesn't have the tech, he doesn't have the resources, he doesn't have none of this. He's basically the Spider-Man that most people grew up on, either in the comic books or in the animated series, where he's always broke. He barely has any friends. He barely has time for little friends that he has. He's always down on his luck and stuff like that. But yet he still perseveres as a superhero and as a person, and then that's why we like to watch Spider-Man. So this film kind of goes back to that, or not goes back to that because Tom Holland's version never really had that, but in terms of Spider-Man on the silver screen, it goes back to that, right? So I thought that was great. Bruce Banner, how they used him in the movie, how they used the Hulk in the movie, I thought was great. He's not there for a ton of time, but I thought he was good, utilized perfectly. Same thing with the Punisher. He was in there a little bit more than I thought he would, and that's not a bad thing. I thought he was gonna be in like 2 seconds in the movie at the beginning, like where you see him in the trailer, and then maybe near the end of the movie where he's needed for like something, and he comes in and stuff like that. That's what I thought, but he was in there a lot more, which I appreciated. And they also didn't just have him there to be there. Like, his character had an arc, which I thought was great. Because again, sometimes when you have a cameo character show up on a film, they're not going to have an arc. They're just there, to kind of push the story along or to get extra butts and seats. But that's clearly not why they had him in the movie. So again, I thought the Punisher was great. I thought the Hulk was great slash Bruce Banner. And you know what? Before I get into spoiler territory, let me focus on MJ and Ned. I thought Ned was good. He wasn't in there as much as I thought he would be. Or matter of fact, you know what? I didn't think he was gonna be in there that much anyway. Now that I'm thinking about it, but he wasn't in there that much. Which again, it's not a bad thing, but it's how the movie was played out, and the movie had people in it for the amount of time that they needed to be. So if you're a Ned fan, you know, you're not going to see him a lot, but you're going to see him for a decent amount of time. Now, MJ, I thought was amazing. She's in it as much time as I thought she would be, but they gave Zendaya a lot more to chew on in terms of her acting, which I thought was amazing. Because when you have Zendaya in your arsenal, in your roster, you need to use her. And she was great in all the other Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. But again, they don't give her much to do in terms of a character, in terms of like growth and stuff like that. She's amazing every time she's on screen because she's Zendaya and she's a good actress. But I think this movie gave her the most to chew on. And I was like, yes, because she did so well, right? Um, Now there's a bunch of other side characters and stuff like that. And I'm gonna talk about the villain, or villains, whatever. And I'm gonna go into spoiler territory. So if you have not seen the movie, stop watching this. Watch the movie, come back. If you don't care about spoilers, obviously stay where you are. But I'm gonna jump into it now. So let's talk about spoilers, right? Sadie Sink plays Jean Grey. And when I tell you that when I saw her name pop up, I was just like, yes! Like, oh my God. You had a few people gasp and stuff like that. I literally just did this, I was like, oh yeah, I was like, let's go, baby. But yeah, you find out about maybe halfway through the movie who she is. And this is the darkest introduction of her as a character in live action that we've ever seen. Not that I've ever seen, pretty much period, that's ever been, like done. And I think that's great. I think it sets up, a lot for the future. She is initially the villain, but then you find out that she is not the villain. The villain is actually the director of Damage Control, who I forget the actor's name, and I honestly forgot the character's name because again, I just got back from the movies and there's a lot to consume. But amazing actor, but he was the actual villain. But Jean Grey as a villain, amazing, great. Sadie Sink, like again, you could barely see her because they kept her hidden so long of like what her face looked like, and then finally when they did show her, stuff like that, it was by the point that she kind of wasn't the villain already, or was about to be revealed as not being the villain. But oh man, she was good. She was good. Sadie Sink, like, is really good at at her job. Like, I loved her in Stranger Things. And it's an ensemble cast. It's a really big cast. So you can't do much with her, especially in the last season when, if you haven't seen her or not, she didn't do much or couldn't do much because of her character's position. But wow, man, I thought she was so good as Jean Grey. And at first, I was a little bit confused or a little bit worried because they were pretty much dampering her powers down. Like her powers were being watered down to an insane level, right? And I was like, man, what's going on? Like, is it that she just doesn't know that she could do these things, or she hasn't learned that yet? And like what is it? Or they're just trying to dump it now because she's just got introduced. So, there's tons of questions as you're watching the movie because so basically, if you guys have seen it or don't care and you just want to get spoiled, she could jump into other people's body, or telepathically, not jump physically, but telepathically jump into people's bodies, and but only within like a close distance, like 15 to 30 feet. Like her max jumping range is like 30 feet, right? Um, and then you see a flashback where her sister, and she's teaching her how to do it because they're both telepaths. I'm not sure if that's the case in the comics. I know she had a sister in the comics by the same name, but again, I don't know if she was a telepath as well. But very short form telepath, right, in the movie. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, whatever. Now, at a certain point, when you realize that she is not the villain and the villain is being a villain and stuff like that, and essentially kind of like torturing her, at some point, she goes through a second mutation. Now, I don't think people realize that this is what was happening, right? So you have her kind of being forced to use her powers to try to expand the jump, right? Because they want to use her as a weapon, and they want to expand her jump more than 30 feet. And she, her Jean realizes that that same organization, Damage Control, and its director tortured her older sister the exact same way, and she ended up being murdered because of that. Now, when that revelation happens, and she realizes that um, she has different kind of brain patterns happening that weren't there before, and then she unlocks her telekinesis, and her telepathic powers just kind of grow exponentially, like 400%, something like that. Last that we saw on the monitor, so it could have been more, right? And that's, I think, the in-universe second mutation that Jean Grey had. So most kids, not most kids, but uh, a decent amount of mutants get their powers during like puberty, right? Some people are born with their powers, right? They manifest, shortly after, what have you, right? Now there are some mutants that go through a second mutation. So I'll give you an example. Emma Frost, the White Queen, she is a Omega level telepath, probably third in the world, only behind Professor Xavier and Jean Grey. Right? Everyone knows that she's a telepath. Now, at a certain point in the comics books, and this is already like 20, 30 years of her character existing, she went through a strenuous situation and went through a second mutation where she gained diamond form. So her skin was made of uh basically almost unbreakable diamond, right? And she could kind of turn that off and on at will. Now, Jean, it seems like she went through a second mutation where her, again, like I said earlier, her telepathy increased exponentially, and then her telekinetic powers unlocked. Now, she had an entire like kilometer radius of people stun locked, or frozen with her telepathic powers while still doing telekinetic things within her vicinity, like, and controlling people to do certain things. Like, it kind of just immediately showed you that she is someone to fear and not mess with. And I thought that was awesome. Once that happened, I was like, yes, okay, we have the Jean Grey of the comics. This is amazing. Now, for the people who grew up not reading comic books but watched the X-Men animated series in the 90s, right? There was a big joke about Jean always like lifting a book or something and fainting or whatnot and stuff like that. And that wasn't really her in the comics. At the beginning of the comics, it was, just because of the time that the comics were written and stuff like that. Women were always, damsels in distresses and stuff. But as, time went on and as society and stuff like that progressed, they're like, no, like these people, these women can hold their own. Like they have powers, like why are they always being saved? No. And they did what they were supposed to with Jean and the rest of the female superheroes and made them formidable, fighters and superheroes and stuff like that. Now, Jean, again, is one of the strongest superheroes in Marvel Comics, and now it seems like that's going to be the case in the MCU. So again, I thought that was cool. So again, all this is like spoiler stuff, but yeah, I thought it was great. I thought the movie was amazing. I cried like twice. I won't say when. Oh, matter of fact, this is spoiler territory. But uh, the interactions, whenever Peter had an interaction with MJ, immediately started bawling. Immediately started bawling. You could add it to the acting, you got it to the environment, all that stuff. But honestly, it's just showing how much a hero, a person sacrifices for the people that they love and for the greater good, and that just gets me always. So I did cry twice I didn't cry as much as I did during No Way Home. I cried for a solid 45 minutes watching No Way Home. I was extremely dehydrated after watching that. But um but yeah, it was a good movie. I can't say that enough. The director is Destin Daniel Cretton, it says here. I have not seen what he does. I should click on it. Let's do that right now. Hopefully this loads quickly. I don't know what he does. But while we're looking at that, he actually directed Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So there you go. One of the best MCU movies to come out after Endgame, he directed. And he directed this. I believe he's also going to be probably directing the sequels. I'm not sure. But yeah, so what else? We're sitting at right now the Rotten Tomato scores. The critic score is 90%. The audience score is 98%, which is sitting at, I believe, the third or second highest Spider-Man movie rated in terms of critics, right? The highest, I believe, was 93, there's a 92, and there's a 91. So again, this is sitting within like 3 points of the top Spider-Man movie in terms of critics. Now, when it comes to uh the audience scores, I believe this is like the top one. I could be wrong. I don't have it up right now, but yeah, at 98, that's almost a perfect score. So yeah, so those are my thoughts about Spider-Man Brand New Day. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you've seen it. You know, what are your thoughts? Do you agree on me on things? Do you disagree? You know, let me know what you thought about Sadie Sink and all that stuff. Yeah, let me know. Like, comment, share, subscribe. I appreciate you guys coming here, listening to me. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.